We're also investing record amounts in healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Last year, our population grew at a record rate of 4.4%, or more than 200,000 people. That's like adding another Lethbridge or another Airdrie to our province, and we're set to reach 5 million people in 2025. That has made it difficult for many Albertans and families to find family doctors and has put pressure on every aspect of the healthcare system, from surgeries to emergency rooms and beyond.
This is Allegedly in Alberta. Powered by Streamlabs Talkstudio with your host, Darrin Thompson.
Knitty, welcome to Allegedly in Alberta. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? The chat is saying that they can't hear anything.
Oh,
better. We did it.
Can you hear? Can anyone else hear me? Can you hear me now? Everything. Yeah, there you go. We got it now. Okay, so you gotta love technology, right? Because we speak the truth, and I don't know about you, but we've been censored on multiple channels before, so that's why we just go to Twitch, we go to YouTube, we hope for the best, and of course the program's being recorded, so if anything gets shut down, we can always repost 2 channels afterwards. And it didn't catch me.
Perfect. Yeah, everyone's saying you can hear us now.
It was more introduction. I was proud of the introduction, but whatever. I mean, if you didn't hear it, you can catch it on the replay at some point.
It was great. I heard it.
Well, good. I'm glad someone heard it. But yeah, we'll upload it to Substack, and we'll upload to the YouTube channel as well. Cut out the hums and haws and make things look more pro than what I do live. So anyway, that's enough about me. You are a like I said, you're infamous here. Where people are talking about what you're saying. I mean, the latest one talking about the connections to a place that starts with I. I don't know how we want to keep things, I guess, copacetic, but a former prime minister and their connections. That one was something that got a lot of traction. I guess the first thing would be, how did you get your start? Like, how did you become the TikTok famous Knitty that everyone knows?
I don't even know. It just sort of happened. I started talking about things that were just really frustrating me, and it turned out that I really wasn't alone in that. And it kind of just took off from there. This has been a hobby of mine since forever. I've always been a researcher. I've always been somebody who's fascinated by history and patterns and just putting the pieces together. And so TikTok really gave me the opportunity to have a voice in that space. It was honestly just a bigger audience to what I was already doing kind of with grassroots movements through all of my life. And it just snowballed. I don't even know how it happened. It just did.
That's awesome. Like I said, it's just out of, I mean, not say you came out of nowhere, because like if anyone's been following, you've had a voice for the voiceless in your community and in the area for a long time. But the Knitty knits aspect, I mean, of course, the knit is based on the fact that you like to knit. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I started talking on TikTok the same way I talk to my community, and I gave myself the name Knit Hoe, like HOE, because I love gardening and I thought it was a ridiculous play on words. But people kept getting censored when they tried to tag me, and their comments kept getting reported. So I changed it to Knitty Knits, and it just kind of stuck. And I've chosen to stick with it because our family last name is really recognizable. It's quite unique. And I wanted to have some separation between what I was doing on the internet and kids, and to give them some protection from everything that I was talking about. So at one point in time, I really did think about just going by my regular name, but I get a lot of death threats. It's actually something that happens on a pretty consistent and regular basis. So I stuck with Knitty Knits, and I'm not going back.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know a lot of, I mean, and to look at it from, not to do any sort of judgment on the gender, but I mean, a lot of female voices that are against the system are targeted, like yourself. I know others that are facing these things, and a lot of it is that misogynist piece where they think that they can, because you're female, they think they can bully you, or they can make you like basically scare you to be quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been something that I've had to really learn along the way. At first, it really got under my skin, and I would feel terrible that I hurt someone's feelings, or I would get really caught up in kind of like the drama of it all. And as I've sat in this space longer, I've realized that 9 times out of 10 it's distractionary. If I sit and I think about what content I've been making, it almost always is a topic that people don't want me talking about. And so kind of like the drama, the death threats, and the ridiculousness just distracts from what we should be actually focused on. So I kind of use it as my check-in to be like, oh, I think I'm on the right track. I should probably keep going down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like we said, we're seeing it on different social media platforms. I mean, you're very strong on TikTok. Did you avoid X Twitter? Like, is that something that you've avoided because of the toxicity? Totally understand.
I was not a Twitter user at all. And actually, when I linked up with JD and we started our podcast, he was like, get on Twitter, get on Twitter, get on Twitter. So I finally caved. I started a Twitter. I used it for about 2 weeks, and then I completely abandoned it because I just truly cannot handle the moral compass of Elon Musk. And what that space has become, it's so disheartening. It's so sad that we've lost something that at one point in time was really incredible. And I don't want to say the word revolutionary, but it definitely had a place in a lot of key moments in history. And now it's just such a dumpster fire. I just can't do it. I just can't.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like you said, it was revolutionary because of the immediacy of like breaking news years ago, like when it was in its infancy. I guess like I would say that I was one of the original Twitter users. At one point, I was followed by Keith Urban, so that was like a check mark for me. But it's not like he's going to read his messages or whatever at the time. But anyway, it's that thing that, like, when breaking news hit, it hit like what used to be, what was Facebook when we first all joined. That's what Twitter was. And then it was more immediate. I mean, yes, it had that the delay because you only had so many characters to do something, but then you could get immediate stuff out and share the links and stuff. And then, yeah, it's just turned awful since, yeah. I mean, it was getting awful before Elon took over, but it's now even, yes, agreed. Wasting is we show that there is the Twitter community is because there's not a community anymore. It's I know I'm on Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky a lot. What's been your experience on Blue Sky in comparison?
I don't have that much of a history with Twitter, so I don't know its ins and outs as much. I do like Blue Sky. I do find I have to really deliberately look for content, and I wish it was curated a little bit better. I don't know if that's an issue with the algorithm. It just needs some time to get its feet under it. But I think it has the potential to be something really special and really cool. It's just not quite there yet.
And that was the thing, is with for my experience, I tried Mastodon, I tried all the other like comparables, and Blue Sky for myself has been the closest thing. What I think, just for anyone watching, to understand the Blue Sky algorithm, or there isn't an algorithm, but to get things to actually start to trend, you have to repost. Just liking something, it looks good on the page, but it doesn't actually share that content. So I don't know if enough people are aware of that. So that's the whole thing of, I mean, if you see what we're posting there, usually it's emojis with the finger pointing and the thumbs up and whatever. Just do something to get to that repost piece. And I know because we were doing some of the Team Canada stuff, and we're proudly made in Canada merchandise, we were reposting, and then we got people complaining because, oh, your stuff's always on our feed. And okay, so I'll slow down. You think that we're just spamming you. It's not really. We just understand that you have to do things differently than just wait for someone to share the things. Speaking of the sharing of the things, you were talking about your podcast. How did that start, and where is it right now?
Yeah, so I have had this concept for a podcast for quite a while. I think that there's this really cool linear line between moments in history that lead to a sequence of events. And so some of them can be really funny. We've done some podcast episodes about how, like, 9/11 caused 50 Shades of Grey and the whole sequence of how we got there. But then some of them are really serious. There's a lot of people who think that Justin Trudeau is in control of all aspects of the housing crisis. He's why houses are super expensive. So because I'm me and I'm a nerd who reads history all the time, I know that the causality relates much deeper into the 1980s. There was a lot of changes to legislation. And so we take those moments in time and talk about how they had a rippling consequence to today, how we got from something really innocuous that happened in like 1985 and how it became what it is today. And so it's called the Tuesday Effect, and really try to cover, I always say I'm going to cover happy topics, or JB tries to cover happy topics, and we're like, whoops, it's late stage capitalism and corruption. So one day we might have a happy episode front to back, but almost always it somehow ties to where the economy is today, or the politics, or something.
Well, and for happy topics, it's really hard unless you're selling out. I mean, you look at some of the people that I call them the progressives, but the ones that present themselves as a progressive voice or whatever, but then ends up talking about more about their business ventures, or how they make money for this, that, or the other thing, and how if we vote this person in, then we'll have more money. And I'm going, does it really work that way? And I know in my family, I have to not watch as many political programs as I do because, yes, I'm like the ADC piece is Angry Dad Canada. If anyone didn't understand the acronym, I got it when I was in commercial radio up in Peace River because I was always angry and and I'm a dad and I'm in Canada, so yeah, anyway, so that's where I got my stuff. But I was hoping that I could, okay, can we get angry? And the unfortunate part is I become more angry with the progressives than I do with the UCP or the conservatives or whatever, because the fact that I don't care what the UCP like. I mean, I'm following what the hell they're saying because they're screwing us over, like they're stabbing us, stealing, whatever. But I don't really care what they're saying because it's all lies and bullshit. Like, I care about what's coming from a progressive voice because that's what we need to come together and have. But then when your progressive voice is, okay, you have to donate to our party, you're starting to lose the narrative for me. I don't know how you are with that.
Well, I think there's a catch-22, and it's actually very interesting that you brought this up today, because yesterday I went and sat and had coffee with Dennis Irwin from the NDP, and we had a lovely chat, and one of her main issues is how she hates having to fundraise and how it's intimate to the movement. She has to fundraise, it's expected her to fundraise, it's a part of her job, and all it does, this is me injecting them onto the conversation. Janice was lovely. She was very kind about her party.
Yeah.
In my opinion, all that does when we tell these progressives that they have to raise all this money is distract them from the work they're supposed to be doing. And especially when you have a government like the UCP, last year before, what was it, like 20 some bills, 20 plus bills, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And allegedly what I'm hearing, rumbling I'm getting, because they're going to double it this year. And they've got some really big, bad ideas coming that are going to really ignite and distract progressive voices. And so we're saying, be on the front line.
You're cutting out here. I don't know if it's the signal from your side or might have to leave and come back just because it's the audio is cutting out there, and hoping we can figure it out from that side. Yeah, I mean, and Knitty, I really want to hear this. I mean, having a conversation with Janice Irwin, as a person, I love Janice. I think she's a fantastic person. I think she's doing what she can for her constituents and is very strong in advocating for her constituents. But then, like Knitty was saying about the waters started getting muddy when it comes to the fundraising for the party concept, and then getting caught up in that whole the whole end of what we're dealing with here in regards of the distraction. And that is something that the UCP are notorious with and have been since Jason Kenney's time, where I use the term Matt, distract, deflect, deny, because at the time they had a guy named Matt Wolf who was in charge of the communications, and that was what they did. Like, we've talked about it before, that they put a record number of bills through during the pandemic, and we're facing those consequences, and we're suffering that all the way up to today. We can't see like we're basically just keeping our heads above water. Some of us are not keeping our heads above water, and that is why I want to have this very important conversation with Knitty in regards of what can we do, how can we move forward, what are the ways to move forward, because I mean, I struggle every day. I know a lot of you struggle every day, and we shouldn't have to struggle. Like, there shouldn't be a point where that, like, we go into the world economy, global economy, there should not be a point where there is only a low percentage of people with all the wealth over, like, what is it, 10% of the wealth is owned by like 100 people, and then 90% of the wealth, or sorry, 9% of the wealth is owned by 100 people, and 10% is what's left, the crumbs for everyone else. And that's what we're seeing here. Like, bring it closer to home, that's what we're seeing here in Alberta, is those that have and those that are dealing with that haven't been affected by these things directly, they don't think there's a problem. They'll continue to vote blue because they think that it helps them. They think that it's okay. So someone is, I will, examples of the Matt defend, distract, deny thing. So what Matt did, it was about having comms people go and take the information that was attacking Premier Kenney at the time, and then make it that that person is a NDP staffer, or that person is, well, yeah, we didn't do any of that. And because there is no direct correlation to the what was being alleged that they were doing, because we didn't have a direct line to what they're doing there, that was the reason why we had that thing. And we're just going to pop the stream here and right into the stream. And any of you want to, like said, we're joining here. If it's issues with the camera or whatever, we can always just go straight audio. So totally understand the thing. And it looks like Knitty is ready to join. And Knitty, are we back? Yeah, we're here. Okay. So can't hear you at this point, but still no. Maybe try turning off the camera. See if it's the.
One sec. How about, you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I had to turn my mic off and turn it back on.
Okay. No, it's all good. And
yeah.
like we're in Alberta, so like the technology is never going to be strong in the rural areas. Like they say that we've got a super net, but no, it doesn't work that way. And yeah,
no,
I was
my
just
Wi-Fi is terrible.
Yeah, and I was just talking about the Matt Wolf and the Matt distract, deny, deflect technique that the UCP would use. And yes, exactly, 100%. Wasting. Matt would throw whatever kind of BS out there so the press wouldn't be reporting on the controversial stuff that they were doing. And most of it was done during the pandemic when there was no media access to them because it was under safety protocols that you couldn't have actual press conferences. So, and then that's when they started with, oh, hey, we're going to welcome David Staples, our main contributor, or Rick Bell, you're on the line. These people that they choose to let in. Anyway, that was my point. You were talking about the aspect of and the ADHD is working perfect for me, trying to remember what we were exactly talking about. Fundraising, yes, that was the thing. You were talking about Janice earlier. You sat down with Janice. So yes, love to hear how that went.
Yeah, so we had a pretty lengthy discussion, and one of the topics that we covered was how frustrating it is she has to constantly fundraise. And she's very kind about it, very positive, but my viewpoint of that is all of these progressive politicians are expected to go door knock and raise all this money, and all it does is distract from what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And on one hand, I understand, because ultimately the lights need to stay on and they need to have money to actually run their caucus. But at the same time, the UCP's main strategy is to flood us, just like what you're talking about with all of the distractionary techniques under Jason Kenney. We're seeing that tenfold under Danielle Smith. And so you have NDP MLAs who are trying to do their due diligence and read this absolute tsunami of bills that are being dumped on them by the UCP, and they can't keep up. They can't do all the things that they're supposed to do. And then we also have that layer of an expectation in progressive spaces to also be the front person of the march, to also be boots on the ground. So you kind of can't be. You can't do your due diligence, do your homework when they're trying to pass 20 plus bills in a year and all of them are distractionary. The red tape reduction bill is one of the worst bills I've ever read in my entire life. It makes no sense. It touches almost every piece of legislation across all of Alberta. It's an absolute shit show, to be super blunt. So how is somebody who's an NDP MLA supposed to be able to go through that bill with a fine-tooth comb and reflect back to the other laws that this is touching on to make sure that they're not sneaking something in, but then also make sure that they're meeting their fundraising quota, but then also make sure that they're engaged in their community, but then also make sure they're participating in social movements and being the face of a movement. It's kind of too much, and it's an unfair, unattainable expectation. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think it's really important to have those conversations, because I think it really turns off some voters to even want to try to care about the NDP or even vote at all. I think it makes people kind of go, this is a contest and this is sort of ridiculous, and there's such kind of cosplaying with this. I kind of think that I really like to make politics boring again. I love to see somebody just do their due diligence, the bills, being straightforward, getting clarification, stand up with a highlighter and saying, why are you doing this? What is going on here?
Right.
It takes a lot of labor to do that. It takes a lot of energy to do that. You really can't do that level of examination and manage to raise 50 grand in a quarter to make sure that you're meeting your expectations. So, yeah.
Well, and that was where, when I started the idea for the Accountability Alliance, that was the point, is I understood that we're facing an uphill battle. Unfortunately, I run into so many things that because they like direct competition of other progressives that are electoral third party advertisers or whatever, that, they just want to focus on this, or we have to go and protest. I said, I understand all those things, but how are we keeping them accountable in the ledge? Like, if the NDP doesn't have the votes, and we can't totally understand, Sarah, Knitty is cutting in and out. I know it is very sad, and it's internet. Honestly, it's rural internet. We're trying our best. The other thing I can think of, Knitty, is if you did it on a cell phone and just did audio, we could do it that way. It's up to you. Or
okay. It usually passes. It usually comes back. It's
okay.
I live in a place with really bad internet.
You live in Alberta. Like, let's be real here. There's only certain places that have good internet, and I guess I lucked out because I'm in the Lacombe area, which has the soon to be the central police station for the provincial police. Oh, sorry, I said that out loud. I shouldn't say such things. Allegedly, the provincial police. But yeah, anyway.
Let me tell you about.
Oh God, yeah,
I could actually rant about that, and it was in one of the bills that I reviewed to set up the sequence of events to even make it happen. So, is it legend or is it 36 minutes? I think it's not legend.
I said on our last episode was about, the first episode was about the police state. I mean, the UCP police. The fact that took the dog out for a walk last summer, and there was 15 patrol cars, and it wasn't Lacombe police, all of them. There was a lot of sheriff vehicles and a lot of peace officers that are there. And I connected the dots about this, that, and the other thing, allegedly. And then the new police chief in Lacombe is the guy who was running the encampment teardowns in Lethbridge, who's connected to Middleton Hope, allegedly connected. I have to keep saying that because my wife said I can't accuse anyone because we don't have the money to take on someone like Sam Araish. So allegedly these things are happening. I mean, I was hoping that calling this thing allegedly in Alberta would cover everything that we're talking about being allegedly, but anyway, it's so frustrating. You just see these things, and I don't blame like the mainstream. Okay, I do blame the mainstream media just on the fact that they're allowing people that are just liars to be media people, like the people that just spew the talking points of Daniel Smith and the UCP as good. There's ones that aren't that are trying their best, but I mean, everything's being cut to crap. And it's so disheartening. And I was trying to have a good, happy conversation, but I don't know. Like you said, we can't have happy conversations about this stuff. It's just not. Yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff that I think sugar-coated to try and make it more palatable, but unfortunately we're at a crossroads where it just isn't anymore. And if we ignore it, it's going to continue to get worse. And we're starting to see a lot of weaponization of language and a lot of stuff that's just going to continue to get a lot worse. Even to your point of not having enough money to fight a lawsuit, we're seeing more slap lawsuits. We're seeing more legal actions taken against progressive voices, more attempted silencing, and I think that's going to get worse. Like I've been warned more than once. I have been at St. Hot's a couple times and have had one cease and desist letter sent to me. So it's something that is just going to continue to get worse, unfortunately.
100%. And like you said, you have the experience with the slap suits. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers would be interested. I know I'm interested to learn more about them. And as I said, just make sure my family's not listening because I really don't want to know about them. But of course, we all want to know. Like you said, the concept is about censorship. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct, 100%. So SLAP actually stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. So the idea of SLAP lawsuit is to shut you up. So it can be one or the other. They can go directly after you and take actual legal action, or they can do something like a cease and desist, threatening you with legal action if you continue to talk. And almost unanimous across the board, what ends up happening with these SLAP lawsuits is it's a bigger voice with deeper pockets who doesn't want their story told. So that's why you're seeing a lot of independent journalists who are getting shushed, essentially. And they do it because what happens is you write something out, you open your email, there's a cease and desist in that email saying, if you talk about this at all, we are taking you to court. You're going to have to get a lawyer. We will drag this out as long as we can. These are the things we're going to say about you. These are the things that we're going to move forward with. And as a smaller content creator, you have a uh-oh moment, and you have to decide, is it worth financial risk to continue to speak on this topic, or do I just shut up about this topic and move away from it? So essentially, it's just legalese for, hey, I don't like that you are exposing me, shut the F up. Occasionally you'll get somebody who really does just slap lawsuit because there is somebody who's harassing them or saying things about them that are untrue. But other provinces, Ontario and British Columbia, figured out how to avoid slap lawsuits, and they have end slap legislation but still allow people to protect themselves if they're being slandered. There's just a higher burden of proof. You just have to show that you're not doing this frivolously. Alberta, sky's the limits. Saskatchewan, sky's the limits. So if you're mad that somebody has said something truthful about you, you don't want that out in the open, you can launch, you can send a cease and desist, you can move towards legal actions against them and shut them up, even if they're right. Even if they're saying it's factually true, there's no burden to prove that what they're claiming is false.
You're watching Allegedly in Alberta, authorized by the Alberta Accountability Alliance, abpoli.ca. So there's our political our shield per se. Been many conversations, and the why behind that is I actually was targeted by Elections Alberta. So if anyone who thinks Elections Alberta is an independent organization, I could say allegedly there's a lot of evidence previously. I think the new elections commissioner is doing things on the up and up now, especially the fact that filing charges against David Parker and Take Back Alberta that was being skated and whatever. The previous CEO was very allegedly suspecting a direct connection to the UCP. I just couldn't connect it. But when I was under investigation, they had a former cop who's their investigator. So lovely when I wear my All Couriers Are Beautiful shirts and use the ACAB sort of thing. They don't appreciate that. But yeah, I was threatened with jail time. I was threatened with they would get a search warrant for my house and take my laptop and take all things if I didn't comply and give them all the evidence that they were looking for. And the evidence was the fact that I was making Fuck Kenny merchandise, and I offered it to the NDP. They didn't respond because whatever it was at the time. But that alleged my offer was then enough for them to call an investigation on me. And then and I will share it with our paid subscribers for Substack. Eventually I will upload the audio from the interrogation where I'm actually accused of being dark money, like Russian, trying to infiltrate the elections on behalf of the NDP. That I'm a Russian op.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that does not check out. I'm just gonna say I don't think that the Russians are throwing their money behind a progressive party.
No, not at all. And I mean,
no.
And it all came from a TikTok that I did, a 10-part TikTok, because I usually talk for too long and then I had to like splice it up or whatever. But in there, I explained exactly what Bill 10 was, where they were changing the Police Act under the Emergency Act and all these different things. And suddenly this post that I made on Twitter that got 200 views got the attention of the elections commissioner, because one of their IT people found it and thought it was, oh, this is a red flag. This guy's making a bunch of money. I'm going, okay, how is this?
What?
Yeah, how does this make sense? I'm going, there's a woman in Edmonton that's making Fuck You Kenny mugs and making a mint off them. And she's on the news and everyone's showing, and Jagmeet Singh's in there and Janice Irwin and Rachel. And they've got like Better Off with Rachel mugs and all these different things. No one talks about that. But this guy who had these shirts that could have gone viral but never went viral is the threat. But the threat was, you're right, the threat was the voice that I had and having that information. So that was how they did it, and they decimated me financially. We're still trying to fight back from it, but that's why we became the third-party advertiser, is to have that protection of being able to have conversations like this and know that this is a political conversation under a third-party advertiser status, not just your regular citizen having a conversation. Because in Alberta, you have to protect yourself. However,
it's absolutely a mess. First, I'm really sorry that happened. That sucks. So exactly what it feels like, the financial hardship from things that are well outside your controls. I really empathize. But also just sucks that you even have to go through those steps, because we're supposed to be living in a free and open society where we can have critiques and criticism of our governing body and not have that connect against us. So Alberta is going in a direction that really terrifies me. There is allegations and alleged conversations that have happened where somebody from Canada has told the US that Alberta will be the first place to leave. Who knows how true that is? A lot of the information coming out of the US is messy and unverifiable, unfortunately. But there's a lot going on that really worries me. There's a lot of recent developments kind of in that last quarter of 2024 with a lot of their bills specific to that Rape Reduction Act that really had a lot of sensitivity on it. Some of the rumblings that I've heard, and again, this is just rumors at this point, we haven't seen these bills, so I'll say it is alleged, that they're going to go after some censorship, and they're going to use the queer community to do it, and they're going to do some really predatory things that are going to cause a lot of people to go, holy crap, why are you attacking this marginalized group of people? And so we're all going to be looking over there trying to protect this marginalized group of people, and then they're going to slide in censorship over behind it. Right. So it really truly is just distraction. Like, how can we keep the eyeballs who would be looking for this distracted, because we're attacking this group over here, and then we're doing some really crazy stuff behind the scenes. And even with a lot of the stuff that's going on with trans youth and getting rid of access to medical care and all that kind of stuff, simultaneously at the same time, you have Stephen Harper suddenly popping up and working with the government of Alberta and taking charge of AIMCO. You've got all of these incredibly problematic bills. You've got huge financial payouts for random people to do basically nothing. It's all just distraction, because a lot of us are like, hey, stop attacking that nice community. And they're like, yeah, stay over there. Keep looking over there. And then they're doing really terrible things, and nobody's noticing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I totally agree with the Stephen Harper. The only caveat that I would say is people don't understand that the actual, like when we use the Star Wars analogy, Stephen Harper is Snoke.
No, he is. Yes, he is. I fully agree.
Palpatine is Preston Manning. Now that's what people need to understand. Yes. 85-year-old Preston Manning, yes. He is the freaking Dark Lord. He is Lord Palpatine. Like, he is Emperor Palpatine. And if people don't get that, the fact that this old bugger is connected to this, connected to that, like, okay, the government of Alberta gave you $250,000 to tell us that COVID regulations were not okay and it was against the human rights. And like I said, okay, we did a video. We went and connected. The current co-prime minister of New Zealand worked for Preston Manning and the Manning Foundation back in the early or the mid 2000s. Was going after the city of Calgary when Nenshi was mayor, and it's directly connected. Now he's, like I said, he's a co-prime minister. Don't get me wrong. Harper is Snoke. Harper and IDU, that is all awful and whatever, but the puppet master is that old bugger Preston Manning, and he learned it from his dad. And people are going, oh, well, he's just reform. Yeah, he did that because he wanted to be likable. He did that to try and win people over. Ultimately, his prime minister he wanted was Stockwell Day. But Stockwell Day was too much of a Looney Tune to get in to become prime minister. So he found the robotic Snoke of Stephen Harper to do his bidding. And
Yeah.
And if you look at, like, there's pictures of Preston Manning with a young Pierre Polyev try to get him to be that conservative with the what is it, the right what is the Strong and Free Network or whatever. He keeps renaming things, so whatever that is, they've got a whole system where they basically do like the Republicans, where you have the young Republicans, you have the young conservatives, where they mentor you, would put you with a long-term conservative, and it's brainwashing, and it's all these things.
I really want to remind everybody as well that Preston Manning used to have the Manning Foundation, like his whole thing. It was a right-wing propaganda machine, and they were paying for third-party advertiser space on Meta. They were setting up fake accounts on Facebook. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. They were infiltrating small town community pages on Facebook and just starting stuff. They were posting like, I don't think I really like Justin Trudeau, to deliberately stoke the fires. This was before COVID. They got busted doing this in 2018. They had to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. In 2019, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this advertising. They dissolved the Manning Foundation and then started something called Canada Strong and Free, which is still active today, which is paying content creators, which has an entire media strategy thing. If you're between the ages of 19 and 30, you can apply to become a content influencer for Canada Strong and Free. They will teach you. They will give you a microphone. They will give you money. They will fly you to conventions. They will put you in front of Pierre Polyev so that you can interview him, and you will present yourself as if you're a centrist on the internet. They're all connected to Canada Strong and Free. And some of Canada's worst humans go to their events and perpetuate their propaganda. They are fueling the worst of the worst, and they are still active today. This is an organization that got caught buying and perpetuating propaganda, and all they did was change their name, and they're still doing it today. They're still doing it today. They're still active. I hate Preston Manning.
I despise that. He is an awful human being. Like I said in one of the old videos there, yeah, he's working for the Rapture. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
He was at going to the prayer breakfast. If you have not watched it and you have Netflix, watch The Family. You will see Preston Manning's, not Preston Manning himself, because he's not directly connected to that per se. He's the Canadian part. So if you watch, it's boring as hell, but
yeah.
That is the whole. The whole premise of it is just repulsive, and how you think that you're voting, like that a vote actually matters when it comes to these things, when these decisions of who is going to be in power are made by these oligarchs or whatever. And
things.
Yeah, it's just awful. The aside on that, which we found out, Preston Manning Foundation is still in existence. The Canada Strong and Free Network actually does not have a charitable status. The charitable status is the Preston Manning
they're
Foundation.
Running money.
Yeah, so they're funneling the money through it to that, and the Manning Foundation's office where they collect the checks is a UPS store in Kelowna.
Yeah. The Manning also has an education network, like a post-secondary education network, where you can pay to learn his curriculum, and it's the same thing. The school address is the PO box in Kelowna. So, in my opinion, I feel like Preston Manning is a grifter in a lot of ways. And sometimes I really question if he actually believes his own narrative and the things that he's perpetuating, or I don't understand him. I do not understand.
Well, he learned from his dad. His
end goal doesn't make sense.
But his dad, like if you look at
from his dad, a lot of people don't know. Yeah.
That, like, his dad, like, if anyone wants to, there's articles there, there's book. I mean, we're in Alberta, so go and look up old William Aberhart. You know, it's not just a school name. Bible Bill was the start of the evangelical revolution for politicians here in Canada. And it was actually Bible Bill's ideas that started the Reaganomics and the evangelicals in the 70s under Nixon and then Reagan, that brought in Christianity and all this, because when Bible Bill had his radio show, which then, as much as Ernest Manning, Preston Manning's dad, was not a very likable or boisterous voice or whatever, but he had the radio contracts, so he could spew his evangelical bullshit to everyone under the guise of Canada Strong, that we will take care of. And the thing that people need to understand, and I really want to go deep into this at some point, there's like a whole like when we look at it like an Overton window, for people there's this. So it starts with your evil people, and then you've got your bad people, then you've got your nice people, because you can always fake being nice. Then you've got your good and kind people, and there's not a lot of good and kind people. Well, like when you look at the Aberharts and the Mannings and whatever, I would say they're more on the evil side because of the shit that they do, but they're at least on the bad side. But then they do good things. Like most bad people will do good things, so you don't see them just being bad. We're going to do so. When it was Bible Bill and Ernest Manning, they did soup kitchens because it was in the middle of the depression. So then they would get these people from all over the country on train stopping in Calgary to go to a soup kitchen and feed them. Then he'd feed them all his bullshit about evangelical conservatism, and then suddenly, vote for this party and we can change Canada. This isn't Tommy Douglas changing Canada. This is the shit that we're dealing with now with the MAGA and the Maple MAGA. This started in the 1930s. Way for us in Alberta.
It's been a grassroots movement in Alberta for almost since the foundations of Alberta, and it's only getting worse, and it's continued to perpetuate. There's a number of those examples even today, like the Nixon brothers and Pat Nixon and the mustard seed and all of that stuff. And again, breakfast, everything going on with Recovery Alberta and who they've hired to write their new policies and procedures for these. Make no mistakes, these are forced institutionalizations of people that they decide have addictions. There's no metric to decide who is going to be put into this situation. There's no plan or exit from these situations. So on the surface, people are like, wow, they're really helping people who are struggling with addiction. But behind the scenes, it's just forced internment. They're just out of sight, out of mind, a bunch of people. And like, I don't want to get you into trouble, but the Nixon brothers have done stuff, and Pat Nixon has done some stuff, and they have criminal records, and they are very not great people, but because the mustard has helped a lot of people, it really truly has. And there are people who have had success there, and there are people who have been lifted out of bad situations because of the mustard seed. A lot of people will say, oh, so great, so great, they're doing such great work. It's the duality of humans where we kind of just flip-flop. And then as somebody who's trying to advocate for more equal treatment and really putting human beings first before money and before agenda and before all of that kind of stuff, I get a lot of pushback, because if I talk ill on an organization, someone will say, but they helped me. They helped me. These lenses are really good at individualizing somebody, so they don't see what this organization is doing behind the scenes. They don't see the bad money that's funneling into them. They see the agenda. And then you're left with an absolute calamity, and you've got a bunch of people in your comments section saying, I can't believe that you're talking ill of this organization. They saved my life.
Yeah.
Two things can kind of be true at once. It's very common. And, you know, there's a really good chance that this new Recovery Alberta strategy might help some people, but it's also most likely going to harm a lot of people. It's going to cause a lot of bad. So how do we have constructive conversations about it and actually fix it and move forward and find tangible solutions if we can't have constructive conversations with the people involved?
100%. And I mean, that goes from all sides of, from your food banks to your shelters, to your organizations. I mean, what people need to realize, I worked for Canadian Blood Services. I worked for a number of nonprofits, as a company or volunteer, or for the nonprofits itself. Nonprofits are corporations. You need to understand that. Unless it's a grassroots organization,
they're registered corporations.
They're registered corporations that will spend as much money as humanly possible to build their brand, and then make sure that they don't have a profit at the end of the day. That is their goal, is to make sure that, so they keep their not-for-profit or nonprofit status. They can't be profitable, so they'll just give money away, but they're not giving money away to programs. They're cutting the programs left, right, and center. They're making their staff work, skeleton staff work, to do the jobs of 3 or 4 people, and rely on their volunteer base to do even more, while the executives are cashing in and all their buddies are being paid the contracts to be the official this or the official that of these organizations.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The comment that says, are we speaking
eugenics or just visibility? Both?
Yeah. No, really, yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of what happened in Vancouver right before the 2010 Olympics.
Yes, I lived on Vancouver Island when it was there. So it was the whole thing of
when the Olympics.
Yeah, the Gordon Campbell moving all the houseless.
They did. So myself and my husband actually lived in the downtown east side for quite a while before we moved to Calgary. And I worked in the downtown east side. I advocated in that space. I participated in a lot of stuff in that space. And right before the Olympics, starting around, I would say 2008, there was a big push to gentrify that area. They wanted Vancouver to look a certain aesthetic. International eyeballs are going to be on Vancouver. And you could start to see it, but I would say not a handful of weeks before the actual Olympics, buses showed up in the downtown east side, scooped everybody up that they deemed undesirable, and just shipped them out. And they dumped them all over BC. They pushed them into the interior. And there's allegations that there's hundreds of people who are still missing. There was no proper checks to see where these people were going. There was no resources. They took people who were already in a really home insecure situation, a lot with mental health issues, a lot with active addictions, and they just dumped them all over BC. And so there's also municipalities across British Columbia that are struggling because they had this huge influx of people who needed services, and they had no resources to treat any of these people. But boy, did Vancouver look good during the Olympics. Sure looked nice. I personally think the UCP is trying to do that on a really big scale. There was some pushback and some conversation and some Q&A for Recovery Alberta of the question of, okay, so you put a person in this program, the person is actively using, at some point in time they detox. So when do they become cogent enough to make the decision to leave? If they want to leave, you're putting them in because they're actively using. Okay, 3 days in, they're detoxed. Are they allowed to make the decision to leave? And the answer was, I don't know. No idea. Not sure. That's a really scary answer. The fact that we don't know how people get into the program or how people get out of the program, in my opinion, that's really, in my opinion, something bigger and scarier is going on, and I'm really not sure can foil that. with it. But when you institutionalize people against their wishes and say they cannot leave, in my opinion, that leads to eugenics, that leads to labor camps, that leads to this is not going to have a good outcome. And because of the lack of answers and the lack of structure of who gets in, who can get out, what's the actual timeline, it got me asking a lot of questions. I'm trying really hard not to assume we're going to end up at internment camps, but it's starting to look a lot like that. And we're
history is shown
about nonprofits. Yeah. And to to your point about nonprofits, where you don't really have a great crew, there's not a ton of money being spent on labor, but yeah, you have executive boards that some executive boards that I've researched have had 25 people on it, and every single one of those people has a salary, but then the actual organization is ran almost exclusively by like 3 actual staff and then all volunteers. That dynamic leads to a lot of situations where there's not enough actual staff managing the situation. And so you're going to take a bunch of people who are in active addiction, who most likely have mental health issues. You're going to dump them into buildings that you have not shown us what they look like. You have no plan for staffing. You're most likely going to skeleton crew it and probably hire a bunch of like $18 an hour people to hang out. It's sort of lockdown. Is it lockdown? We don't fully understand. Nothing good is going to come from this. Nothing good.
No.
In my opinion, nothing good.
Yeah, and until these people go to jail, and I mean, everyone says, "Oh, well, where do you want to see? Well, don't you want to see them be?" No, I just want to see them all in the Hague. Honestly, like if we could just take all these people and throw them in the Hague, and just there, that's where you go, and then we can rebuild from there. But I know I dream. It's just, but no, nothing good is happening here. I did time. I was a part of the advisory council for HS before they did the revamp. As soon as I got the word, like I was part of the initial discussions on Recovery Alberta, and I actually questioned the word recovery. I'm going, well, if you're an addict, you don't really recover. You're it's road to recovery. Like you're never fully recovered. Most people, like you always have your addiction. So I got a lot of pushback on that. And then they brought in the whole thing that it was going to be, oh, don't worry, we're going to set up this app. I'm going, what the hell is this app? And this was the app that was part of connected to that New Westminster, BC, not necessarily Marshall Smith, but allegedly connected to Marshall Smith. Anyway, so they were talking about this app at one of our meetings, and I'm going, this is just crap. Like, how is an addict going to use an app? Like, oh, well, you just check in. I'm like, okay, if you're struggling with addiction, most times you're just going to lie in regards of because you need real help. But this is just a way for you to monitor these people. And once you're in the app, I was asking, well, who has this information? Oh, well, we can't disclose that. It's private. I'm going, is this like private, like the TELUS Babylon, that the information just suddenly went missing? Like, are we talking about that? Oh, well, we can't, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so if someone wants to get out of the program or has gone through the program and is now considered recovered, where does this, like, who has access to this information? Do you have to disclose you were part of this program? And what I was getting is that employers could access this information, that potential employers could contact the government to see if this person was actually went through the recovery, and going, so these poor people that are dealing with addiction, that basically if they don't have the supports, they're going to die. You're basically putting them in, giving a death sentence of being monitored for the rest of their lives.
It's the lack of clarity on questions like that is causing my red flags to constantly be up around this entire program. Also, the conversation that's now added about quote unquote recovery capital and the cost return value of somebody. Oh, that's a what? Pardon? What do you mean? You're deciding what a person's value is, and the only reason why you're intervening is because you want them to be part of the tax base and you want to make revenue off of them. But then also, I know how predatory a lot of these recovery programs are. Are you going to expect a return? Like, if somebody was in this program, are they going to walk out now considered quote unquote cured and recovered and now a viable member of society? Are you going to say, now you have to pay us back for the time that you were in this program? Like, what's going on here? Because there's too much gray, and there really shouldn't be in government programs. That's the one thing you cannot afford to have is question marks. Like, they should be able to tell you who has the data, how long the data is stored, how it's protected, who has access. They should be able to define what recovery capital actually is. They should tell us how long somebody will be in the program, what's the entry structure, what's the exit structure. But it's the fact that they can't that has a lot of advocates in the space saying something's not adding up here. This really doesn't make a ton of sense. And when you pair it with a lot of the changes to the Healthcare Act, as far as like the oversight minister and giving one person unilateral control and decision making for all healthcare matters, and it being not someone from healthcare, and they've temporarily put LaGrange in that position, like, okay, cool, I guess. It's stuff like that has me just going, what the hell are you doing? What is happening right now? Yeah, and I struggle with it a lot because, you know, I really respect your opinion of just not even wanting to get involved in politics. They're all the same. We're just fighting for teams. We're not actually solving any problems.
Yeah.
I'm in the headspace of we have to work within the parameters of the system that we have and fix it from within, because we're not at a place that we're ready for an actual revolution, because we still have members of our community who think that sweeping up a bunch of people with addictions that they've decided don't have value and are undesirable is a great idea. And there's a lot of really questionable decision making for some people. And so how do we actually tear down our entire government, rebuild it in a model that's better, while still dealing with people who do have this ideology and don't think that all human life has value, and think that there's conditions. You know, if a person doesn't meet a metric that they've decided, that person has no value of any kind. So my opinion is the most effective way is to work with the least shitty party and kind of demand accountability from that party and try to rebuild the house from within. I also believe voting is democracy. I think it's step one of democracy, like it's standing outside the door. And so then you get into the house and then you can start to remodel it. So I'm stuck in a place because 25% of the time I'm like, revolution, burn it down. Have we tried maybe like turning it on and turning it on again? Like, we give that a try, but I just don't know how effective that would actually be, because we also have human beings who need to eat and need clean water. So can we fix a system that at one point in time was okay, and can we make it substantially better? Or do we need to completely throw out the baby with the bathwater and try again?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are very good points. I guess the one I keep going to, and I mean, this is popular in some aspects, very unpopular in others. I question the royal assent and lieutenant governor. I honestly do. I sit here and go, what the hell do you do other than rubber stamp something through? Like, how is that actually benefit anyone outside of these corrupt governments to know that you're not going to stand up for citizens because the monarchy has made the choice that we're not going to be political? But I'm going, okay, when it was a different circumstance, I could understand, okay, it got a little revolutionary here, so we don't want to start another one. So we're just going to throw up our hands.
Mm-hmm.
But now when we're sitting here going, and especially when we have someone like Her Honor Lakaney, who presents herself as a voice of women and a voice for the voiceless, and like going to Indigenous events and whatever, and then signing off on bills 33, 34, 26, 10, like these things that are direct violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and not saying anything. I really have a hard time just sitting here going, okay, I understand your position is this, but according to our parliamentary system, your position is our safety net. So if we can't rely on the government to be, I guess, human would be the best way to put it. How do we get through?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that's really. I think we're almost ready to have that discussion. I think there's other organizations as well that are supposed to be our safety nets, and the police force of stopping corruption who are also not stepping in. So I don't think it's just that avenue. I personally think we need to reevaluate the entire structure and who has authority to do what, because we've done such a bad job of holding corruption accountable. And yeah, I understand the frustration of like, oh, they sign this bill and it passes and it gets sent and it's gone and it's away. I think almost take it down further. It needs to not even be able to get to that point, and it's more headed. And I think we need tougher expectations on our parties. If you're caught in any corruption, you're out. I don't understand. I don't understand the UCP has been able to dodge Jason Kenney's voter corruption, and the fact that they attempted to rig and overthrow his election, and the fact the RCP were like, yeah, this did happen. We spent 5 years investigating it. Here's all our notes. The issue was they were doing so many things badly at that point in time that witnesses couldn't remember which bad thing you were asking them about. They couldn't get to trial because it's too complex of a case. And ultimately, they said it wasn't enough vote to actually cause a change in the election. And ultimately, Jason Kenney won either way. I don't care. Any voter corruption should be looked at as an incredibly serious, horrifically bad thing. But we don't have an organization that has any
teeth. Oh, you've cut out. And you're cutting out again. Oh, this conversation is so good, and I can't. Yeah, that's okay. There we go. Yep, you're there, and you're not, and it's all good.
Oh, can you hear? I can see the bars. The bars are coming back.
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. What I was saying is there's no teeth in any of these organizations to actually do anything. So you have very high-ranking RCMP officers standing up and saying, yes, we investigated Jason Kenney for 5 years. We found 2 very credible examples of voter manipulation with the kamikaze candidate, as well as actual voter fraud, and we can't do anything about it. So all the safety nets have failed within the Alberta government and other governments across Canada. There is nothing that none of these regulatory bodies can do anything to intervene. And then by the time a bill makes its way to a place where it's getting signed off, I don't even know if they're the ones who are necessarily the problem. I think it starts lower, and we need more safety nets throughout the entire process to make sure it can't even get to the point where it's getting signed into law. And I don't understand how Danielle Smith is not in incredibly deep hot water with all the gift scandals, with all of these Category Z expenses and payouts to friends, to people who have not actually done the service they're being paid for. there's so much of it. It's so blatant. And I think that's why people are checking out, because they're realizing that nothing is going to get done. And so you're starting to lose, people are getting really like put off by this, because
Yep.
they're like, well, I can see that this is bad and no one's doing anything. And even if you want to take it a step further, we all just watched Pierre Poilievre campaign for the last how long? And Elections Canada did nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's both. It's both. So
Yep.
I fully agree, but I kind of think that I think we need to take down lower. I think it needs to go, we need to start lower and stop it before it can even get to that point. But again, we got to get in the house to fix, we got to do some renovations from inside the house before we can deal with any of this stuff. Because
like,
that's,
okay,
in my opinion, that's the truth.
Can we kick the door in? Can we do the police battering ram? Like, would that
Yes.
be? I don't know. Like I said, like I understand the whole. I totally agree with your concept there. I think we're all fighting on the lawn like it's a bad party, that we're at a bush party and we're on the lawn and we all had too many drinks and we're all out there throwing punches instead of going into the house to
yes
to fix things.
And
because
the
the
left
call
is
is
really
coming
bad
from
for
inside the
turning
house. Yes.
Yes. I think the left is really bad for tearing itself apart as well. Like, we do one hell of a job of incorrectly pleading ourselves and being like, you're not enough ally, you're not doing enough. We'll throw people out and not really ever give a chance for redemption. Or if there's somebody, organization, maybe have problem with history who wants to do it, we're not great at making space for that.
Yeah.
And we're so busy fighting each other that all of that energy is wasted. And meanwhile, the people we should be super stressed about are tiptoeing past us and walking into the house and changing all our laws right underneath our noses. So
100% and presenting themselves as progressive, but they really just want a different shade of conservative. And I don't like the UCP, but I'm still conservative. I'm going, but conservative, what has conservative gotten us? Like, if we look historically, what has conservative gotten society? And if you're okay with that, that's that whole question of, if we can't move forward in a revolutionary system, if we have people that still believe that not every life matters, that we start with of course, we start with the Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, the as my child would say, the alphabet mafia matters, and then we can go to the lives. But it's the, like I said, from both of us, like, mine is more, like I said, ADHD and stuff. My wife has fibro. You're dealing with disability. I mean, that's the struggle that I see, is we have all there's a lot of us disabled people that are very angry, that are doing what we can, that have the energy to do stuff like this, but can't get out and protest every freaking 5 minutes. But our efforts aren't looked at as important as the efforts of someone who goes to the ledge every Saturday.
Yeah, and that's when it gets really tricky. I also get stuck in this place where I have run into so many people who show up with a sign, pat themselves on the back, and then go back to doing nothing. And I would rather see people actively involved. I saw a really incredible thing on the internet where there was a library meeting that just happened, and the woman who was the president of the library board was super mad because a trans person stood up and said, hey, I exist. And people were rallying around the trans person and they were trying to ban books, and it got really elevated and really heated. And so the woman who was leading the meeting called the police. And there was an actual like neo-Nazi sitting behind her who is incredibly problematic and incredibly terrible. He is known. They know what associations he's connected to. And this woman was signing herself with this man, and an elderly woman stood up and called her a Nazi and called her out. And the entire time I was like, more of this. I don't need your sign. I need you to actually like stand here and call people out and be a part of this conversation, because it's I truthfully I want both. I want people to protest, and sometimes it feels like the protest is falling flat. Like we get really radicalized, and we come and we do our thing, and we've got all the signs, and we're doing the correct steps, and then we forget about it.
Yeah.
I want you to do stuff in between, even if it's just a little tiny bit. Like read an article, look into the history, find out who these people are, be educated about the voting process, know what's the difference between a municipal, a provincial, and a federal government. It's not all Justin Trudeau's fault. So learn who is accountable for the things that are falling apart. I've had so many conversations in my own community of people saying like the hospital wait times are terrible and this is awful and that's awful, and every single thing they're talking about is municipal, and all of it is being blamed on Justin Trudeau. And provincial, it's all provincial and municipal, and they're blaming every single step of it on Justin Trudeau. It's not his job, babe. That's not what he is in charge of. Learn who's in charge of what, and call them, email them. If you only have 10 minutes of energy and time that you can devote to activism, spend it going to the right people. Learn who the right people are and engage with the right people. And the left is very good at performing activism, but not actually doing activism. I also have a really firm belief that something vitally important to any revolution is rest and community. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and prioritizing yourself, and making sure you're prioritizing your community and getting actively involved. Because all of a sudden, when you're hanging out, having a music festival in your local park and everybody's dancing, no one gives a flying crap about what the UCP is doing. And you really want to protect your green space. And nobody cares about any of that other stuff. And it's incredibly effective. The most effective thing you can do is build a community, whether that be through craft, art, entertainment, anything that brings people together. All of a sudden, you start to look at everything the UCP is doing and go, wow, that's really against community. And I feel the best when I'm with my community and doing something really engaging. And then you start to kind of change people's perspective, because a lot of political policies on the right don't want us to be in community. They don't want us to be connected to each other and see each other's humanity. So spend 10 minutes a week finding humanity. And then all of a sudden, all of us are going, oh, I hate this political practice. That's my 2 cents.
That is great advice. And I would just add that if you don't have the energy, or like if you're not comfortable meeting people in person, if you do connect with people online, that is still community. That like don't fall into this whole thing that online doesn't like that they're not real people or whatever. People that you meet online, if you're like you're doing a FaceTime, you're doing what we're doing tonight, that is real community. That is, we're having these conversations. It's, don't feel like you're alone. You're not alone. There's a lot of us that are behind you. And if you feel the struggle or whatever, please reach out to us. Like we always say, that we're here. We'll be a voice. If you want someone to say something that you're scared to say, I'll say it. I have no problem saying a lot of things that most people don't want to say. It's if I was worried about that, it was gone long ago. But it's those things. But please reach out. Like I said, I started. Number one, the idea on the Accountability Alliance was to protect my ass. Don't get me wrong. It was cover my ass, because the only way I'm going to be able to do anything is if I am not going to face any sort of legalities. But the other piece is to get like-minded people together. And like I said, if people want to be a part of it, we've got open aspects. Like people say, well, you're the alliance. I said, right now I am the alliance because the people that we had originally, they didn't want to be there long term. They didn't see a long term idea on what this could actually be. And this, like, the first idea is the community piece. And when I was sitting there and going, what could we do for the community? That's when I came up with the Mutual Aid Manifesto for Alberta. And you can find it at abpolica.ca. You can look it up. You can ask questions, whatever the case may be. Like I said, you can find us. You can find Knitty. Ask it, like, just connect with people. Like more of us that are like-minded need to connect and get our messages out to the masses that are being distracted by those that, like you said, go in with take their selfie with their sign and then go home and forget about everything until the next protest. Everyone has a job.
Yeah. I think there's a place for everybody in whatever happens over the next 5 years, 10 years. I think it's just really important to find a place that you can feel safe in such tumultuous times, because I think fear really radicalized people, and it's something that you saw through all of Reagan's presidents. He leaned into fear, and the more scared people were because of the economic instability and destructuring of public programs and walking away from any type of socialism that America had in place, it didn't lead to people disliking Reagan. It led to like Nazis, and it led to a radicalization of rural United States. So learn about that and how that happened, because it's gonna happen in rural Alberta. It's something we've been dealing with forever, and it's just going to continue to get dialed up as people get scared. So part of finding community is also just finding a place that you feel safe, because if you feel safe, you're less likely to get radicalized, and so are the people in your role. The pipeline is so real. The pipeline is so real. So I know it's cheesy, and I know some people are like, Knitty, stop talking about fiber arts, but really, truly, knitting meetups and quilting guilds and doing things where you're coming together and you're sharing your craft, you can be terrible at it. I go to a knitting guild where this one woman has never finished anything. She's just there for the vibes. She's there for the chit chats. And it is one of the most inclusive, progressive spaces I've ever been. The first day that I went to this quilting guild, I sat down at a table, and this delightful old woman who's 85 years old said, "So Trump's a piece of shit, hey?" And I was like, this is the best place ever. Like, I love this place. And they share resources, and they check in on each other. I recently just had pneumonia. I missed a bunch of sessions. They're emailing me and checking in on me. And I felt really seen. I felt like there was people in the world outside of my four walls who really cared. And it's really, really important. And I know that it sounds so dumb when we're looking at how many problems there are in the world. We're like, go find some friends. But it is vitally important to whatever is happening in this space. And individualism is a tactic. It is something that white supremacy and supremacy models has utilized. And the more hyper individualized we are, the worse off we are. And when you have so much infighting in progressive and leftist spaces, all it's doing is individualizing people and pushing them to that radicalized space. So, like, just find something you can get along with. I'm not saying go love everybody and like everybody. Find a place of tolerance where you can really build community, and let's try and stop the pipeline, because people are going to get even more scared over the next probably year with all these tariffs, and it's most likely going to get worse. You add in the fact that Daniel Smith is taking away healthcare, taking away AISH allegedly, and restructuring it, adding in Recovery Alberta, putting a lot of question marks in our head. You're going to have a lot of people who are scared. So my priority is always, how do we not be scared and come together instead of being scared and pushed apart?
Great philosophy, and totally agree with that. It is imperative that we come together, and I use the philosophy of don't be trash. So I always say,
Mhm.
if you're not a trash person, so if you're not transphobic, racist, ableist, sexist, or homophobic, we can work together. I don't care if you're a Flames fan, or it doesn't matter what politics you
Mhm.
have or whatever, but as long as you have a core value and integrity behind you, we can get past the rest of the
Mhm.
stuff. But it's that core integrity that we need to work on first, that we look at making people feel included, not excluding people, because that's like, if you look at historically, and I mean, you're a history nerd, so you're going to totally understand this one. Most people will, is to look at, I always tell people, we are in the 1930 Germany right now. I don't want to scare the shit out of
Mhm.
you, but it is true. Like, they come for this first, and I didn't say anything. You know that whole
Mhm.
saying of, and then they came for me. Well, they're coming for this now. And we have
Yeah.
to stand up against that before they come to get the rest of it. And
Mhm.
a lot of this stuff, yes, it's scary. A lot of them are whatever, but a lot of them are just fucking bullies that like to lip off. And if someone actually punched them in the
Mhm.
face, and I'm not advocating punching someone in the face. You may punch a Nazi, and I
But a
would
little
not.
bit,
A little
maybe?
bit, a little bit. I wouldn't, like, if you moved your arm back and it hit someone in the face when you were stretching, I wouldn't be sad about that. But I'm not advocating any violence. Any of you people that are watching this thing as monitoring us, there's no advocation of violence. I'm not trying to ignite anyone. I'm just trying to ignite the passion and the compassion for your fellow human. That's what I want to ignite. I want to ignite the
Mhm.
fact that, like, I don't like people. I'm not a people person. I love my family. I love my dog.
Mhm.
I care about people that are outside of our main circle, but I don't like being in crowds. I don't like a
Mhm.
lot of things. And our society continues to just make it harder and harder for me to tolerate people because of the individualistic ideals that most people have.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's a really tricky thing that's permeated us for I would argue it always existed there, but I feel like it's gotten worse since Reagan. Um,
Yeah.
we even saw it you even see it a lot today where someone's like, I'm really struggling financially. And people are like, that's a you problem. You made bad decisions. It's not a, well, I was 18 years old and told if I took out $60,000 in debt, I would have a job that would compensate for that expense that I took out. We don't have those broader conversations because it's so individualistic. I think it's a tricky road right now as well because you do have a political party across the globe, arguably, who are transphobe, homophobes, racist, ableists. They are all of the things. So when I struggle when people are like, no, I vote conservative. I'm like, ugh. And I have to do a lot of digging to find out who these people actually are at their core value, because the conservatives have also done a very good job of of making people question if they are actually those things, or they've individualized their candidates so bad, like in the case of Jennifer Johnson, when she had her whole poop cookie scandal.
Mm-hmm.
The UCP was able to really insulate itself from her transphobia, and then even let her come back in after everybody had kind of forgot about her for long enough.
Yeah.
They have individualized their candidates so long that there is no kind of like collective moral compass. And I think that, like, yeah, fuck Jennifer Johnson. I think that we need to have kind of more conversations about some of these political parties don't even think that all humans are humans. So if you choose to
Yeah.
vote for that party, you might be compromising your moral compass. Are you okay with that? Is that something that's okay? And I do also really want to highlight, to tie back to your Germany comment, 1930s, the first people that were eradicated in the Holocaust, the first people that were targeted by Hitler were disabled people and queer people. And that is actively happening. Disabled people are being minimized. They don't have the resources that they need. They're being othered. We're seeing incredibly aggressive bills in the United States. Same goes for the queer community, specifically the trans community. There are states in the US that are talking about deregulating and removing gay marriage. It's happening. They're going after the lives of these marginalized groups, and they truly are the first domino to fall. We're doing a podcast episode about something called the Dominion Institute, and they were an educational movement funded by a billionaire in Canada that really focused our teaching of history. We learned dates, didn't learn what those dates actually meant and the full concept around them. And so even my own children who are going through social studies, the other night, my little kiddo said, hey, what does the Nazi symbol actually mean? Like, I know it's bad, but I don't fully grasp it. Hasn't studied World War II yet. My older kid had. So I explained, you know, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I said, and the first people who were eradicated by Hitler were disabled people and queer people. And my older child said, they didn't teach us that. That wasn't part of our curriculum. Why were they not included in the conversation? It's deliberate and intentional, so we don't even know which dominoes are the first dominoes to fall.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I just watched a documentary, and I will share it because it's probably going to get torn down from YouTube, about the Holocaust and the history of that, and the history of Israel. And people, and very controversial, the fact that when you looked at the Zionist movement in that country and what they started with, they knew that at the end of World War II, they had millions, like I think the count was about 15 million of the Jewish population that were still in Europe and Poland and Germany and whatever, and they decided they're going to save 10,000 because they didn't want, and they're like, we chose that because we didn't want to have poverty in the new country that we're starting. And I'm going, so from that get-go, this is where we're at. That people go, well, you're calling someone out as a Zionist. I'm like, yes, I am, because Zionism is not Judaism. There is a difference between that. And you can come and call me anti-Semitic for being that, but it's not true. The truth is the Judaism and the being Semitic is got nothing to do with being Zionist. But right now, because it's been weaponized, it's all encompassed. So very similar to the whole thing of everything is under one banner, because we can just, if we've got something that we can weaponize, then we're going to do that to keep you. And yes, and Killer, you have a great point. Oldest chapters of Zionism exists in South Africa, and if you look at the history of Zionism, it's actually Netanyahu's, I believe, grandfather that was one of the original members of the founding group that brought that into where we're at today. So when people are going, as I'll say, Jerry Seinfeld, who we were raised to appreciate the Jewish faith as this, he is 100% a Zionist and not a person that you should listen to in regards of, oh, I don't care about Palestine because they don't matter to me. That is exact words from him, because this country that they've created. And if you want to go into current state, this was the idea behind the Ukrainian war originally, when the US was using Ukraine as the proxy war. Ultimately, they wanted to build their own Israel as the Ukraine, so they had a military hub in Europe as opposed to just having it in the Middle East.
I actually have somebody near my life who is really struggling right now because they're Jewish, and almost instantaneous, they were really struggling to disconnect their Judaism from their experience of like going to the Holy Land and connection to Israel. Because I will say, Israel has done one heck of a job of indoctrinating people, and it is 100% a campaign. So my friend, my peer, who I'm is kind of near my orbit, they were really struggling to disconnect their Judaism from Israel. And when everything happened on October 7th and people started to even understand what was going on, they really dogpiled on this person because they didn't think that this person's response of, I don't want anybody to be hurt, was the right answer. But they also didn't give this person enough time to kind of detangle their connection and their, I personally think it's indoctrination. I think that person experienced religious indoctrination because this idea of Israel has been really weaponized against Judaism. And so what ended up happening is this person who literally is the sweetest baby angel, who has a great moral compass and loves people, got super radicalized because the Zionist community was willing to scoop them up and say, you're safe over here. We'll protect you from those big, scary, mean people. And so this person who was always really progressive, was always super inclusive, was always serving others, became really weaponized and became a mouthpiece for Zionist propaganda and was even quoted in the National Post. And we watched it. We watched it happen. And the entire time I was like, you know what? If one person had been like, I get how complicated this was. I understand. And this person doesn't live near me. This person's kind of separate from me. Yep. So I was kind of observing it from the outside. If one person in their community had been like, I get that this is really complicated and that this is really tricky for you to unravel, they most likely would not have gotten radicalized. But we watched them go down the pipeline. We watched it actively happen. It was really crazy to see in real time.
And that's the thing that people aren't like I always say, and like I'll come out and apologize, like for my thoughts on like going back to locally or nationally of our country of Turtle Island, the aspect of not understanding the Indigenous culture or the Indigenous trauma, that the entire like generational trauma that they were dealing with, and having those sort of different thoughts towards the Indigenous population, and because the fact that we're inundated with a whitewashed sense of history, where we're celebrating the John A. MacDonalds and we're celebrating these explorers and these people that have actually come in and murdered the Indigenous population and committed genocide in Canada, and we celebrated these things. And then when you start to learn, you're going, holy shit, was I wrong? Like, how
100%. You have to unravel
feel so bad.
It. You really have to unravel it. And we have to, I get when people are like, this person needs to fucking learn, and they get super mad that these people aren't doing enough. But on the flip side, there's a lot of Catholic people who had to unlearn. And there's a lot of every religion who had to unlearn and detangle themselves from the mythology that surrounded their faith. Because in my opinion, religion and faith tend to be two different things. And religion tends to weaponize faith against people. And we're really good at giving who we like best the time that they need to detangle those complicated thoughts. But if we don't like you, we're real good at dogpiling on that person. And I think we have to find a place of balance within that, because not everybody knows everything. And usually those who are screaming the loudest and saying, I'm a perfect ally, are pretty terrible. So we need to allow a little more humanity, because we hold people to this expectation that they're gonna have enough time to work enough to feed themselves, to shelter themselves, but also be extremely educated, but also know what's going on in pop culture, but also understand what's going on in global affairs. We're not doing a great job balancing here, and it's just radicalizing people. We're rinse, wash, repeating the exact same thing that we saw through the Mulroney era and the Reagan era and the Thatcher era. We're doing the same thing again. I hope we can learn and we can do better. I do feel like one of Canada's greatest blessings in the last 2 months has been Donald Trump, because there's a lot of people who are going to vote for some really questionable politicians who are going, ooh, I don't know if I want that here. So maybe we're going to be okay,
Maybe.
and Canada's going to realize maybe, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
No, and
But I'm
I mean,
hopeful.
I'm hopeful that I'll say it straight up. I'm not political or whatever. I'm hopeful Mark Carney becomes the leader of the Liberal Party, because he seems to be the only one who is not pushing a already whatever the Liberal agenda is. Very disappointed with Chrystia Freeland. First of all, appearing on Bill Maher. What the fuck were you thinking? Secondly, you were basically giving right-wing talking points. You're basically telling me that you're trying to get the people that think Polyev is too extreme but still want to be conservative, that you can get them to come to your side of the equation, which good Lord.
And we literally just watched that campaign fail. We watched that strategy fail, and you're doing the exact same one. Who is guiding you? Who told you that was a good idea? Terrible idea. Please don't do it.
Yeah.
Lower taxes.
Exactly. That is the yeah. Oh yes. The problem with that is the fact that we watch it fail every 5 years, but then we have to go through 5 years of failure to watch it fail. Like if I could just watch it, like if we're just watching the first term of Trump, that was as bad as it was not what it is now. Now it's scary as fucking, it's different. But first thing is just this lunatic that was like hawking pizzas and his book to whatever, and he's just a blithering idiot. Like, it's just whatever. You can watch that and go, oh, at least we don't have that. We got rid of Harper, who was a robot and was evil, but at least we don't have that. And then we've got old Pepe Le Pew going, oh, Canada's broken, I've got to fix it. I'm like, you're not fixing anything. You're going to hurt us more.
Yeah.
But you aren't Trudeau or, yeah.
It's a mess. It's truly a mess.
It's such a mess. I just wish there was, like, as much as Jack Layton wasn't perfect, he brought some sort of togetherness when, and unfortunately cancer took him. And I don't understand how the hell his widow is the mayor, like how that person is the same person that was standing beside Jack having a beer in the bar with the average person during the campaign. Like, how did you become the enemy? I don't get it. But anyway, that was my thing is, like, when I'm looking at it, Layton was the closest thing to a Tommy Douglas that we had. Unfortunately, he played that game of pulling that Overton window further to the right, and because he had to capture that liberal vote, because we have this duopoly for whatever reason that we have the duopoly. And I know I'm just sighing, like we could sit here and talk, but I'm trying to be positive. I'm honestly trying to be positive, but I'm finding less and less things to be positive about. And I'll bring up a personal thing. Watched wrestling last night. Watched John Cena turn heel.
Oh, John Cena!
You don't understand how bad that was, because this is a guy who brought hope for people, and now you're making him a bad guy. Anyway, that's that's a different.
I think it's weirdly on topic though, because it's kind of the same mood for everything that's happening. Is we've all kind of lost hope. I think we stand a chance of seeing it again. I agree. I do hope that Mark Carney gets in, because I think he is the most logical person to beat Pierre Poilievre. I also appreciate he is incredibly educated. I personally, ideology-wise, never going to vibe with somebody who's a multimillionaire who sits on a board that owns $200 billion in real estate assets. It's just not, that's not going to be my guy. But I do think he's incredibly intelligent. And I do think that his moral leanings have shifted slightly. I have noticed that he spends a lot of time talking about ensuring that Canadians have access to what they need, and has talked a bit, has talked a bit about a universal basic income and restructuring carbon tax, and really taking that conversation out of where it's being weaponized and putting it somewhere where we can have a constructive, logical conversation about something we have to have. You know, Pierre Poilievre is saying, no carbon tax, get rid of the carbon tax. Okay, what about all the tariffs that all of these countries that we do trade deals are going to put on us because we're not following an international agreement? I appreciate that Mark Carney is like, yeah, this one doesn't work, but we got to figure out how to fix this. And I'm tired of politicians who aren't offering solutions. It's something that actually I talked to Janice Irwin about yesterday. I said, you know, I was really frustrated because I went to the NDP medical town hall where you were telling me everything that the UCP is doing to harm healthcare, but you didn't tell me what to do to get involved. You didn't tell me what to do to get informed. You didn't tell me what you're going to do to step in and do anything or fix this in any capacity. And I felt like it really fell flat. I feel like that's kind of the issue with the NDP, is they keep pointing out how terrible everyone else is. And in a lot of ways, they're doing very similar strategy to the other parties. And I feel like the reason why Mark Carney is, I know people who are diehard progressives who are like, I'm voting liberal for Carney. I'm voting liberal for Carney. It's because he's offering tangible solutions that make sense. And he's done a pretty good job. He's had a few moments, but he seems to be doing a pretty good job of explaining it like I'm five. And I think a lot of people get it. And he's playing the game. He's really simplifying that conversation. And I think that's why it's resonating with so many people. And I think that's a swing and a miss right now for the NDP, is they're not doing a good job of explaining how they're going to fix it, or explaining their bills simply enough. I think they tend to make them a little overcomplicated. Like, I personally liked the GST relief. I don't think it was explained well. I think the media around it was a little messy because people were very confused by it. I think that there just needs to be a little more clarity and a little more direction. I'm to the point now where I almost feel like there needs to be a viable fourth party who could start to shift everybody back towards the left and back towards socialism, and really like actively calling out these bad bills. But it kind of circles all the way around back to what we talked about at the beginning of this episode, where there's an expectation of fundraising. There's all of these goals where we don't have our MLAs actually doing the job because they got to go raise fucking 50 grand. So how do we make it so they can actually just do their jobs and not have to sing and dance for their supper? Like, why are these parties needing so much money to do all of this advertising? The left is so broke, and they're putting that financial burden onto their MLAs, and then it's taking away from them actually doing their jobs. And so it becomes this cyclical thing of failure. So I would really like to see a progressive party that's human focused, that all humans have food, water, shelter. That is their mantra. If it is a bill, if it is an agenda that goes against that, it is not something that they're going to stand for. Even when you look at something like what was going on in the House of Commons, it got really overshadowed with all the stuff going on with Trump and everything. The NDP were trying to protect and codify abortion rights and say that all Canadians should have access to reproductive health care. That was the bill they were trying to put forward. The Liberals put forward a bill that was trying to shut down these clinics that pretend like they're reproductive health care clinics, but really they're just cosplaying, and they're religious-based organizations that are talking people into having their kids. And then there's a bit of a pipeline that leads to adoption as well. So they wanted to remove their nonprofit status and attack them via their corporation. One of those bills was focused on ensuring that Canadians have rights and access to healthcare, and the other one was focused on making sure that there's not a bad corporation damaging the reputation of other corporations. Those are two very different perspectives, but I don't want a political party that's figuring out how to put the money first. I want a party that's putting the human beings and their interests first, and then figuring out how to make money. And that's, in my opinion, that's what we're missing. And I think that's why Jack Layton really resonated with a lot of people and why we saw Orange Wave, because he really truly was perceived as the person who put people first and figured out how to protect people. He found the money after he figured out what needed to be done. And there's just not a lot of that happening, in my opinion, with provincial NDP or federal NDP really anywhere. I would say maybe Wab Kinew is probably the closest, who's effectively putting people first and figuring out how to pay for it. And if you look at that guy, how he is perceived across Canada, people love him. Because I think at the end of the day, we really want to protect people ultimately. I don't think most people love when their neighbors are suffering. I think a lot of people want people to be okay, but we've kind of weaponized it and we've made them so individual that it's become this like toxic cesspool and nothing's getting done. And then we have all of these political parties who are all about money. And when you're all about money, you're going to sell your interest to the first check. You're going to Stephen Harper, you're going to sell all the assets to balance the books, and people are going to suffer. So that's all I want. I really, truly want a party that puts people first. And so a lot of people think that I'm like an NDP plant. There's kind of like a rumor going around that I'm running for the NDP. And I'm like, did you listen to the last episode of the Tuesday Effect? Because I spent a solid 30 minutes shit talking the NDP. And like I critique and criticize these parties because someone needs to. There needs to be voices in the conversation saying, does this policy you're bringing to the table put people first? And if it doesn't, it's probably not a policy that we need.
Absolutely. And I mean, what you're seeing now, who is the strongest NDP voice? Charlie Angus. And why is he the strongest voice? Because he's not running again. That's this guy totally took over as Team Canada's leader. He's the guy that everyone wants to lead, but he can't lead, or he's not leading anything politically because he's leaving, he's finishing his term and then he's done. So it's that thing that people are protecting their, and I think that's my argument with some of the provincial NDP, is you're more focused on protecting your political career as opposed to protecting your political base that are your constituents. You're more interested in making sure that you look like a good politician as opposed to looking like that good advocate that we actually voted in.
Yeah, I think it might also be an issue just from the outside looking in. I think I even notice it. I've even had it where I had a video where someone who's a really big creator is mad at the video, and so they go out of their way, get the video taken down and squash the conversation. But the comment section is full of people talking about how important the conversation was, how important we want to get this narrative going. Just because someone had a loud voice, the conversation got squashed. And I feel like that is happening in politics a lot, especially since kind of the 1980s when we started to see Canada's version of lobbyists and these advocate groups that were setting themselves up to scream the loudest, basically. And so you have all these MLAs and MPs and MPPs and all that stuff who are just getting squawked at constantly by really loud voices with deeper pockets and bigger audiences. And so they might have these really powerful conversations with their constituents, and they are really inspired by it, but then all of a sudden they have just an absolute dump truck of this very loud voice, and that big voice skews everything and makes it seem like that's the most important conversation. And then, there is some culpability for ourselves in it, because we are so individualized and sensationalized that if a politician does something that we don't agree with, we'll just cancel them really, really quickly. Yep. So they're always kind of towing this weird line of trying to be the perfect advocate and keep their nose clean, because we're really quick to eliminate them. But then the crap that some of these MLAs here in Alberta have gotten away with, like DUIs and hate crimes and all of this kind of stuff, and that's totally fine. So I think we have to kind of find some balance here and figure out a way to give value to all voices, just not the loudest voice. But I'm not really sure how to do that, if we're there yet. But I think conversations like this continue to help with that.
And technology is lovely, and we're back, and you're there. Gotta love technology, but that's good. Yeah, the DUIs and the MLAs, it's just crazy what these individuals, sorry, because not everyone's a guy. The individuals are getting away with. So it's absolutely crazy.
And still welcome.
Yeah, and they're still welcome in the party, and they're still. It's that. I could talk to you forever, but I mean, we have to have sleep and rest, like you said. At some point, we're going to do this again. I hope that you will come on again, and we can have these conversations, and maybe take some questions prior, so we can do a Q&A, so we can answer some things.
That would be really fun. Yeah,
really want to do there, and we'll go from there. But as always. How do people reach you? How do people support you? Of course, we have the links in the show notes, but floor is yours.
Yeah, you can follow me on TikTok. It's Knitty Knits on TikTok, or The Real Knitty on Instagram. I'm also on Blue Skies Knitty Knits. And you can follow our podcast, The Tuesday Effect, which has its own Patreon channel. You can watch it on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Amazon or Apple Music. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can hang out and chit chat with us.
That's awesome. And again, you have on your social media, you have the link tree that goes to all the stuff. They can donate yarn and all those other fun things.
Yeah.
And check out the Instagram. I'll that, and we go again. Gotta love the fact that things are just booting. So see, it's telling me it wants to wrap up before I can even do it. But anyway, you can go on Knitty's Instagram. I highly suggest that. Check out some of the work that they've done, and their modeling photos of in the backyard, and the beautiful work that you do. And just keep it up, and we will keep the conversation going again until our friends, the Breakdown, make themselves
come back,
Nate. We love you, and nothing but love for everyone, and love to you, Knitty, to you and the family. You guys take care, and we will talk again soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me.
So that was fantastic. We appreciate Knitty taking the time. Again, apologize for any of the tech issues that we had. It's technology, folks. It just goes with the flow. For us, like and subscribe. All the stuff is across the board there. You can see, connect with us. Subscribe to the Substack, abpoli.substack.com, and we will make sure that this is edited, and full version of this will be available for our viewers and listeners on Substack, and shop the Breakdown collection and all those sorts of things. Other than that, folks, take care of yourselves. Take care of everyone around you. Love to everyone out there, and we will see you all again soon.
Care alleges recent reporting linking the company millions of taxpayer dollars, the UCP government, and free hockey tickets is unfair and defamatory.
I wouldn't have put anything out there that I wasn't confident was true.
But the story Pike told on his Breakdown podcast has him in legal trouble.
I need your help because I'm being sued for $6 million.
This has been Allegedly in Alberta. Authorized by Alberta Accountability Alliance, abpoli.ca@gmail.com.